Did we start recording?
Yeah.
Yes.
Automatically. And then I will.
That's really what Greg's house looks like too.
It is,
Gosh,
yeah.
It's perfect.
It's an AI generated version of Greg's house. The cool thing is if I turn off the the video effect or whatever, right behind me is a circa 1993 intercom system radio.
Oh, nice.
Radio.
Yes,
yeah.
Perfect.
But I kept it because I like old school.
Yeah, for sure. I've got a picture. It's a vintage. It's like Van Halen's last club show, like a poster for that.
Oh, that's cool.
Yeah. Hello, Bill.
Hey, Bill. Are we going to have the audience muted, Tasha, or?
Right now their mics are open. We can close them, but I always kind of like if they wanna.
Okay.
But it's up to you guys.
That's good. The only thing you get is sometimes you'll get somebody with a dog, or they'll take a call or something, and you'll hear them taking a call. So
and I'll mute them.
Yeah, then you can quickly mute them.
Yeah.
Did you see my Macho Man post this morning?
I shared
did not.
I likened some of the fanfare from Mr. Benioff to a wrestling promo. People are joining. Welcome.
We'll start in like 3 minutes. Give people time.
It's going to be a fun conversation.
I agree with you, Chuck.
If you saw the Randy the Macho Man Savage post earlier, you have to imagine we're going to break some glass.
And I got to go look. Oh, boy.
I see Terry Bowen. Hello, Terry Bowen.
Oh, I'm getting off mute. Good morning, Chuck. How are you?
Fantastic. Hope you are.
Great. I'm doing well, thank you. Yes.
Hello, Andrew. How you doing?
You're on mute.
I just talk very softly. Now, hey, how are you?
Morning.
Glad you guys are doing this morning. I'm excited to listen in.
Yeah. Chip in, please.
All right, Chuck, Greg, we'll start in 1 minute. We'll give the 2 minute after.
Well, it's definitely a hot topic. I'm looking forward to it.
Yes.
And we were supposed to talk about professional wrestling today, right? That was what I was preparing for last night.
We can absolutely talk about whatever it is you want to talk about, Chuck. I'm sure there's tie-ins to AI with professional wrestling in some way, shape, or form.
We'll listen to anything you want to talk about, Chuck.
Thank you, Terry.
All right. Well, I think we'll get started, and wanted to welcome everybody for joining Greg and Chuck's conversation today. Like Chuck said and Greg said, it's an exciting topic. It's a hot topic, but I think they're going to dive in. They're going to dive into kind of the readiness, the safety, the security, accuracy, cutting through the hype, and some of the concerns of the implementation complexity. So before we dive in and Greg and Chuck kind of let us know about themselves and how they know each other, I'm going to launch a poll to see kind of what your guys' top concerns are. And so we make sure we cover them. And while that poll is going off, Greg, Chuck, can you guys do your quick introductions and how you guys know each other and how did you two get together today to talk about this?
Greg,
Go,
why
Chuck.
don't you go first?
Okay. Yeah. So Greg Pierce, nice to meet you guys. I've been in and around the IT space since the early 90s. And right around, I want to say, 2010 to 2012, met Chuck. At the time, we were going through a transformation where everybody was starting to talk about cloud. And the conversations at the time were around or along the lines of, is this cloud thing real? What's it look like? Is this something I should use or not? And, then as we all know, that kind of became inevitable. And kind of the transition from do I do it became I have to do it. How much of it do I do? And where do I put what? We were having a conversation the other day and I hadn't seen Chuck, I think, in a professional environment for a while, though I'd seen him play in a few bands here and there and had some cocktails with him. And it feels like this is the nexus point of at least my professional career. And I think Chuck agrees that AI is more of a game changer than anything I've seen in technology throughout my career. And since I've worked in technology in 1993, I think, back then, like the very first conference I ever went to was this thing called Comdex, and it was called the Year of the CD-ROM. And some of the stuff that we've looked at in the past as game changers, I think pale in comparison to what we're seeing from an AI perspective. And then kind of the nice thing that ties it all back together is the work that we've all done in the cloud, and especially the work that the big public cloud providers have done in Google, Azure, AWS, has really positioned us in a way that we can actually take the most advantage of AI. If it weren't for this massive infrastructure in place and the compute power and the software that has been deployed that we just don't have to think about, then I don't think that we would be talking about this AI revolution right now.
That makes great sense. And so it's interesting, and I'll pile on a little bit with not about the music or the band so much, but one reason I think Greg's such a great person to have a part of this conversation is my first 5 years and by the way, when I started with technology, I was my job was I was working at night during the summer in college, and I had to bring down the ATMs of the bank and bring them back up, and you had to, all that information went on a floppy disk, and a floppy disk was about the size of a wedding cake back then. Well, it was the size of a section of a wedding cake, and you took it off. But anyway, I would say like my first 5 years of knowledge about transformation came either directly or indirectly from Greg. He was our cloud guy at this company called Tribridge we worked at together. And I think the reason he's an amazing resource here is I saw a webinar where Satya Nadella said some things that were controversial, but he also said some things that were super compelling, where he said that pattern recognition was really important in leadership. And if you think about it, a lot of the things that people like Greg led us through as we were going, I'm not going to put my stuff in the cloud. What do I need to think about there? Those are the same questions we have with AI. And I think Greg's an excellent resource there. I come from a background of, I'm kind of a frustrated CRM guy. I worked with CRM since the very earliest days, worked on, and my friend Jim Hughes is on the webinar. He was directly involved with Tom Siebel, did some work with Siebel and things like that back in the day, worked at Microsoft, HP, Tribridge, Avanade, and we actually started this company, congruentX, to help companies get CRM right so they can grow revenue. And it really hasn't done that great of a job. And until, as Greg said, now we're starting to see, wow, we can do something here that can actually make this thing work. Interestingly, fun fact, when we started congruentX, our first website said we were going to help people get CRM right with low code and AI so they could grow. And we got into conversation intelligence 3 years ago. We built our own playbook-based conversation intelligence engine called Dialogue Copilot, and can't wait for this conversation.
So you mentioned kind of the hot topics, and you mentioned so recently Benioff and Satya recently shared their perspectives on AI and SaaS. What are your guys' thoughts?
You want me to go first?
Yeah, go, Chuck. Go ahead.
So I was joking about professional wrestling earlier, but you can apply this to MMA. So if you're like 5th place in MMA or boxing or wrestling or whatever, and you want a title shot, you talk to Mike about the champ. Salesforce is about 7 times smaller than Microsoft. And for the first time in their history, and I don't mean this as smack talk on Salesforce, but the first time in their history, they've dipped below double-digit growth rates. So I think part of what's going on is we're hearing, we're hearing somebody try to get in the news. Mr. Benioff says that Microsoft's just dropped OpenAI into Excel. They spent about $12 billion, I think. So I hope they got more than that for their money. Salesforce last year bought a $16 million company called AirKit.ai and dropped it into CRM, and it became Agentforce. So there's I don't know, how many people knew that? How many people have seen Jim Cramer and others say that Salesforce is lead? So there's a lot of good stuff out there. I'm not saying Salesforce or Microsoft. I'm just saying there's a lot of hype too. Salesforce as agents is deeply grounded in Salesforce. Microsoft has their own AI suite that's grounded in what they call Microsoft Graph, which is all the stuff you use, and CRM. So there's a lot of goodness out there. Folks can come to their own conclusion. The other thing that Satya Nadella said was, well, he really didn't say, but it became newsworthy, was SaaS is dying. He kind of indirectly said it. It depends, but in Chuck's opinion, it depends on what SaaS you're talking about. I would say it's going to take a minute for ERP and CRM to go anywhere. But you think about it, there are a lot of other apps that are going to get disrupted. There's an app called Chug, I think it's called Chug. Chug was what I did in college. But there was an app called Chug that when ChatGPT came out, it went from 29 to 2 in the stock market. So there's a lot of little sort of things that are a feature, but it became a company and they got these big multiples and stuff. I think they're going to probably get affected first. And that's where AI will come in and disrupt things. I don't know. What do you think, Greg?
Well, I think that we're super early in the AI journey, and we talked a little bit, we touched on the fact that, when cloud first came out, there was a lot of FUD attached to it. There was people that were talking about the things that you could benefit there, but not necessarily, everybody wasn't necessarily on board yet. And I think you're seeing the same sort of thing right now. The reality is there's a handful, and by a handful, I mean a very small number of people who have been in the AI space for, say, 10 years in a meaningful way. And just about is a newbie to this, and a newbie, by what I mean by that is in the last 2 to 3 years, though everybody propones to be an expert. So what you see is those that are, I think, ahead, like Microsoft, they're beating the drum of let's move to AI. And those that are behind, like Salesforce right now, they're saying, oh man, I wouldn't do that right now. There's all these security concerns. Once you install Copilot, I think Mark Benioff said, it can access everything, including what the CEO makes. The reality is, when you install Copilot, it can access whatever you have access to. Now, the things that are within your purview to access, that's a different story, and we can talk about that in a little bit. But I think the interjection of FUD is happening for companies that haven't yet fully matured an AI idea, an AI platform. Now, Satya, I think his point is fascinating to me. What he's saying is these kind of insular, siloed approaches that we've done in the past, which have been very, very good and excellent transition points for us from an enterprise and mid-market technology perspective, actually across the entire spectrum, which is, I have a SaaS application and it will provide to you Salesforce automation, or it will provide to you ERP. It can provide to you, management of your customers and platform and billing and, all these different things. And we've had them connected through APIs, and, different people have had software. And what Satya is saying is all that's going to go away and it's going to disappear, because in order for AI to be truly functional, not functional, but truly optimized, it's going to have to touch everything, and it's going to have to pull together all of your different components. And nobody's prepared for that right now. Nobody's ready for a truly integrated, woven kind of fabric that pulls it all together. And that's where we're heading. So it's going to be very interesting to see how SaaS companies pivot and how the underlying AI companies like Microsoft with their offerings and AWS and GCP, how they all pull this together to create more of a unified approach.
So you kind of touched on it a little bit, but kind of diving in more to addressing the fear and the hype. So what do you guys think about the growing concerns and fears surrounding AI? I see on here that 29% of the people on the call right now is safety and security. So Greg, what do you think? We'll start the opposite.
Yeah, so I think that in data, there's a lot of sprawl right now. Data hygiene for most of us has gotten a little bit out of control. And what that creates is a scenario where we have to kind of clean up our own house a little bit in order to fully recognize the value that AI can bring to us without being afraid that it's going to pull up stuff that we don't want to see. I don't know how many, I'm sure everybody that is here has used Google to look up whatever it happens to be. You're looking for websites, you're looking for information, you're looking for something to shop for. Google has actually some different algorithms that you can use, where if you type in, like, for example, file type : and you put in, XLSX, it'll only pull up files that are Excel files, stuff like that. If you do a little experimenting with that and you look for the word password with Excel files, it'll pull up a whole bunch of Excel files that have passwords for companies that fully did not intend for that to happen. So there are a lot of things that are out in the kind of the internet space, but also then within your actual network and your data domain that needs to be cleaned up. And the way you can do that is through data tagging and data cataloging and using tools like Microsoft Purview that can look to determine this is data that I do not want in my email. I don't want on an individual hard drive. I don't want it in SharePoint. And we're going to take that and we're going to remove it or quarantine it because it has personally identifiable information. It has, I'm making it up, but you can do it, driver's licenses from Texas, from the Netherlands. This violates a specific compliancy in Germany. All of that is possible. So the good news is the tools are there to be able to circumvent a lot of the FUD that's there right now from an AI perspective. And if you haven't yet tried to utilize any of the AI tools that are readily available, they're surprisingly good once you do start using them.
Makes good sense. I think maybe I'll talk about another dimension of that question that Tasha asked, and and I'll start by saying we don't have a poll for this, but how many people say please and thank you to AI?
You can raise your hand. Give a
Is
thumbs
there
up.
is there like a halfway, like sometimes I do? And
Yeah, if it's what do you call it, Greg? We talked about this the other day. The call center for the telephone company or something.
yeah.
Yeah, or the airline. Anyway, so I kind of do because I think I'm being polite, but I kind of do because just in case, just in case. But what I would say is, amidst Mr. Benioff's sort of some of the things he's saying, he does say some things that are pretty compelling. He talks about digital labor. Anybody heard that term? So I'm in professional services, and there's this thing going in professional services where, okay, we can find some folks we'll get some people in Mexico to do the professional service consulting work. India, oh, well, there's some, we can go to Vietnam and it's cheaper there, or we can go to this place and it's cheaper there. And that's called labor arbitrage. Well, if you have digital labor, what do you do at that point? So is it scary? Well, what I would say, and I don't think Mark says it, that I act like he's my friend or something. I don't know. I've never met him, but what he would tell you is there's not enough people to do the work that we need done. And I do know that our birth rate here in the States is not as out of whack as it is in like China or some other places, but we do have on the horizon not enough people to do work. So as AI gets better and it can do more than little tiny slivers of people's jobs, that we kind of need it to help us there. So, but as Greg said, we're in the early days, and if we said that it's going to take people's jobs right now or replace people's jobs, it can't quite yet, but it can do things to help us. So think about a salesperson. Like a salesperson does like 6 things. They plan their week, they get ready for meetings, they have meetings, they follow up on meetings, they do their pipeline, they plan for customer. Can it do 3 of those things to help us? Can it summarize a meeting for us? Can it put emails in CRM? So there are, let's say, jobs to be done that it can augment what people do, and I think for quite some time there's going to be a human in the loop for these things.
I was waiting for you. If you didn't say it, I was going to say, I think Chuck's motto for 2025 is human in the loop. AI is not going to replace you, but so we're going to pause here really quick. If there's any questions, I'd be curious who, when you asked what's your, fears, or someone selected other. And if you guys are okay, if they want to come off, I'd love to see what your concern is about AI. Whoever it was, we'll give you a second. Also, you got to stay to the end. We're gonna have a link for 2 hours free with Greg and Chuck to kind of see your guys' roadmap and talk AI for your business. So stay tuned. Give it another 30 seconds here for whoever that other was. I'm really curious. Anyways, continue on. The foundation and kind of speaking about the, envisioning lab, as an offer, the foundation of readiness for AI success. Can organizations jump right in with AI and Copilot, or is there groundwork needed? Thoughts?
I mean, I think.
Oh, go ahead, Greg, please.
Yeah, I mean, I think that you can certainly dip your toe in the water with some of the AI components, and like Copilot, for example, is ready out of the box. You can get probably 60%, 40% of where you can actually go with it with AI at the end of the day. But it's important, I think, to have the pieces in place that make sure that you're not exposing any data that you wouldn't want to expose, and that things are configured properly. You have to remember that you're going to start completely with generative AI out of the box. And if you don't have the things in place like an Azure landing zone, if it's Microsoft, for example, I think you're going to run into problems right out of the gate with things showing up that you don't want and some things not showing up that you would want inside of your different Copilot and or AI implementation. So the first thing I think you need to have in place is, what does your security posture look like, and what do you have from a data governance perspective? There are software tools that are readily available that allow you to do that. Like I said earlier, Microsoft Purview is a great one, and it also ties in all the different Microsoft tools. If you're a Microsoft shop, just about everybody has, and by everybody I mean AWS and Google, have those components in place. So you want to make sure that things are shored up and that you have a solid foundation, I think, before you really do anything that's super meaningful and you start using your data, which is the iterative data, the pieces that really are the secret sauce that can combine with the things that AI has built using the people that programmed it and using things that are readily available on the internet. So the short answer to the longer answer I just gave is yes, you need to have a foundation in place. I also think that you shouldn't operate from a place of fear, like, oh my God, this is going to expose so many things out into the wild. So it's really not. It's going to expose things that you have given it access to. So I think at the end of the day, the answer is have a thoughtful approach to it and then execute on that thoughtful approach.
It looks like Anna, you had a question. If you don't have what, can you clarify? Oh, maybe we'll get that. Oh, Greg said you must have something. Was it Microsoft Purview was one of the tools?
Yeah,
the security. Yeah.
So it looks like safety and security, 29% have that fear of AI.
Greg said you.
I'll type in an answer in there, and Chuck, you can go on.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah. Let me just give you a quick practical example. It could have been Azure's. Okay, Greg's gonna.
Yeah.
Let me give you a quick practical example of maybe a way to get started is, and we'll keep it short so we can keep moving. But in my world, CRM, Salesforce says 91% of CRM data is not accurate. So if you're the chief revenue officer, what are you going to do with that? It's like you're the coach of the team and you can't go out on the field and see what's going on. So can we use AI to help us get better data? Some would say we can. It's not too risky to use something like Copilot for Sales to just, can it plop your emails in CRM? Can it summarize your calls and put them in CRM? Can it think about what your strategy for a deal? Not yet. Human in the loop. But so you can kind of do something. The cool thing is you can kind of do some things to get some of that foundational things going while paying back some people with some efficiencies while we do.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So I'm just going to dive in. Safety and security, 29%. Accuracy and accountability was 35%. And the complexity was 3%. So kind of overcoming those hurdles. Are these challenges manageable with the right approach, or, people are kind of concerned about the complexity? Greg, what are your thoughts?
I do think that they're absolutely manageable. I just actually posted in chat. Part of it is that templates have already been built for deployments for data governance around Copilot, around just standard AI type deployments as well. So it's not like we have this functional AI and we don't have all the other pieces underneath. So, oh my gosh, what are we going to do about this? And how are we going to fix it? And where do we go? Probably the not bad news, but the slightly bad news is that it's a lot of tools that have largely been ignored for a period of time. Standard security tools obviously have been embraced and used, but things that tie to like data classification, data cataloging, ensuring that there's compliancy, insider risk management type stuff that a lot of companies have talked about, a few companies have implemented, and now we all kind of have to understand what to do there and how to make it work within our organizations so that we don't end up in a place where AI is kind of adrift and has exploded and we're not using it to its fullest potential, and it could expose things that we don't want to expose.
Yeah, it makes a bunch of sense. And you can look at your use cases, right? And different companies have different use cases. So you can have simple use case like help salespeople, customer service people get information into CRM. Large language model can help. If you're working in the healthcare field or defense or something where it's really important, maybe smaller language models is the right thing. You hear about Metas all the time on TV, but Microsoft has, I think there's Phi 3 and Phi 4. And as Greg said, one of the benefits with some of the bigger companies, they do have a lot of tools that can help you do things in a safe and secure way. Whereas you're kind of if you're out in the wild and trying to do this in Grok or OpenAI, for example, I use M365. I built Copilots all the time. I use Copilot Studio all the time. I don't go in Azure AI Studio to build. Our team does that. But all of those have some security and some guardrails around what you can do that make sure you can do things that fit your use case and fit your company's compliance profile.
Kind of goes with the next question a little bit, as the accuracy, accountability was top on the concerns of 35%. Deep fakes and misinformation, how worried should businesses be?
Well, I thought you were going to put that in the context of like social media, and I'm not a Kardashian, so I'm not as worried about that. But the implications are real for a company in terms of reputation or using misinformation, wrong information to make decisions, because these LLMs are trained on, they have algorithms in them, and if they're trained wrong, they will they will give you back the wrong information. So I think we have to be really careful with agents. Agents are really important, but we have to be really careful with agents. Agents can do jobs to be done, but right now we have to be really careful that an agent does jobs. Jobs to be done is a task, right? A piece of a job that somebody needs done that a human will be in the loop from. But giving an agent a whole job when it's got misinformation potentially in it, that could be kind of scary. So I'm sure Greg has a point of view on this.
Yeah, I mean the deep fake that we hear in the news all the time is the nefarious one where somebody's trying to influence, somebody, a country, whatever it happens to be, by pushing out misinformation that looks extremely real. And I saw a meme the other day, which it was I think it was April, not the other day, it was a while ago. I'm getting old, but it was April 1st, and it said, April Fools, the day that we actually look to see if we're being fooled or not. Because there's so much misinformation out in the marketplace and out in the world. What do you do with it? So I think that for the purposes of this webinar and for companies when they're looking, it's not the nefarious deep fake, but it's the deep fake of how good is your data and how accurate is your data, and is it using a spreadsheet, for example, that has erroneous data that made assumptions that were inaccurate. Like we had a customer that we worked with on an AI project where they believed that they could add products to their storefronts, their retail stores. And when people walked in, they were going to buy things, and they would buy the other things that they saw because they were a target market. And their target market, they thought, were males between the age of 30 and 50. Well, what they found out was that actually wasn't their target market. The people that were going into the stores were the mothers and the wives of people that were between the ages of 30 and 50. So then they launched a women's line, and it took off. So if that were the information that you're starting from, then AI is not going to do a terribly good job of changing that. You need to have I think Chuck earlier mentioned some data hygiene type points, and without the right data, I think you're going to struggle to get to a point where you can build the right AI models. So I think it's important to build a foundational data domain as well.
So Brian, this is perfect because we were breaking for questions, and Brian says he struggles with deciding when I differentiate through creating my own AI function for use case while understanding what capabilities will become commodized with different providers. How do you keep up with the evolving capabilities?
Yeah, you want me to jump in there, Chuck?
Yeah, you can. I have a couple thoughts on it as well. So please go ahead.
It's a tough one to figure out, because if you look at like the cloud pieces, when we were first building out cloud components back 2010, 2011, we built a lot of things that we didn't need 2 or 3 years later because they were built into the cloud platform and they were part of it. And I think you're going to see some of that with AI. So unfortunately, I think some of it is going to become that you do build out, like if you're using Copilot Studio, whatever it happens to be, and you have customer facing components, and those components become commoditized down the road. I think it's important to look at the roadmaps, and those are available for all of the major platforms. I think it's also important to stick with a major platform, whichever one you choose, because using kind of an outlier, I think, exposes you to going out of business risk, being acquired risk, not as much development risk. And then look at the things that, if there are things that a lot of people, a lot of companies are doing, those are the things that are likely to get built into the platforms. If there are things that are very unique and outside of the box, I think those are less likely to be built down the road. Things that are specific to you, those aren't going to be built. So I think that is where you should invest your money the most.
So Chuck, I'd like to jump ahead, and I know, and you can add on to that, but AI claims to reduce costs and increase revenue. And we, as congruentX, have the, AI fueled revenue, right? Can you share some of maybe some of our success stories and the importance of getting those tangible results and how AI can help?
Yeah, for sure. I think real quick, I want to go back to what Brian asked, and I think you can, I mentioned early on that patterns, and what we saw with SaaS and even before SaaS is, the mainframe, you had to bend and twist your work and fit it into these forms. And now, for the last few years, if you go take the dog for a walk, you don't fill out a form, it just tracks it. But what we've also seen is companies with these giant multiples who are SaaS companies who they just filled in cracks in CRM and ERP. And I think those companies are going to get, you can build a lot of that in AI. So it's kind of becoming the new UI for a company. So I think one of the things you can do is start small and find quickly solvable problems. And I'll transition into what Tasha asked about. So let's go back to our friend. We talked about this imaginary person, Mary, and we've applied Mary to, she's a chief revenue officer, and she's one of our avatars in our firm. So Mary is the chief revenue officer, and she's got 18 months to do to make an impact in her company. And we talked about data being bad, CRM data being bad. Hygiene is one thing in terms of duplicate data and things like that. But what if she can't tell what the team's doing? You can't coach the team. So what if we can take the friction out of getting good data into CRM with AI? Pretty safe, right? We didn't risk the farm. It's deeply tied into Outlook and things like that. So back to Brian, to your question, probably not something you or I would build. And we've done this many, many times with our clients. But then let's say that Mary has a point of view that she wants her team, playbooks that she wants her teams, that she wants to say in conversations. That's something that maybe a big company doesn't have, that you can do with AI. So she can shape the conversations that her team has using AI. It was something she built. And we're seeing people get a tangible revenue lift. So let's break apart what I just said. Summarizing calls or emails, if you take that to the CFO, they're going to laugh. They're going to say, oh, you gave my salespeople an extra 15 minutes a day. What are they gonna do? But if you take a business case to the CFO that says, hey, we are going to lift revenue by 10%, and we're going to do it by changing the conversations that our salespeople have, by, instead of talking about features, they're going to talk about the what, the why now, and why us in conversations. So if you do that, and you can lift win rate by 1 to 3%, you can, you do that for three things, you could see a 10% lift in overall revenue. And then the CFO is on board with these things. So I think they kind of tie together, and there's a continuum. So foundational, then efficiencies, then effectiveness, and then later agentic. Make sense?
Yes.
Looks like we have some good questions in there, Tasha, if you wanted to.
Yeah. So Anna has a couple questions. AI within a company's platform becoming a big black box that no one understands the AI logic. Her other concern is maintenance of the big AI big black box.
Yeah, I think the good news is, I think that's everybody's concern, Anna. It really is. And it's not as unmanageable as it feels right out of the gate. You know, the good news is if you put in place the right foundation, like we talked about earlier, if it's Microsoft, you have a Azure landing zone that has all the foundational pieces in it from soup to nuts, including network. It includes storage. It includes all the pieces that tie to security, backup, everything. And then layer on top of it the right data management tools. So you're not pulling, for example, a application that you did for a mortgage where it has your social security number, how much you made last year, and it's sitting on your hard drive. You can remove all of those different pieces that are scary. And the good news is there's tools that can do it, and there's people that know how to do it. And once you have that in place, the ongoing is maintenance. It's not a big, heavy lift. And then you can really, recognize the power of AI without all these concerns.
I want to add something on to that makes great sense what Greg said. The good news is we've seen a little bit of, and I'm thinking specifically of your question, Anna, is we saw this with Lotus Notes. We saw this with spreadsheets. We saw this with SharePoint, and we started to see it with low code and now AI. And a good way to start is there's a term, center of excellence, and we won't go into super deep detail, but you can have an AI center of excellence so that some things are built by an external partner, some things are built by your IT team, but some things can be do it yourself, but there are parameters. There's remember the cars they used to have at Disney World where you could turn it, but you would hit the guard. I guess that was before you guys were, but they, it not just colors and company logos and branding guidelines, but things, guardrails around safety and security. And that's where an AI center of excellence can come in handy for a company, is you give people the ability to, and we don't want to discourage that ground up innovation, but we want to have some guardrails around it, if that makes sense.
And we have another question from Andrew. I've heard this from CMOs and CROs of mid-market companies. Generative AI is so easy to use. My team should be able to build their own tools, or I could hire a fresh college grad to do it. Your thoughts on DIY AI for companies?
Want me to go, Chuck?
Sure. I think I touched on it a little bit, but maybe you can take it to the next level.
Yeah.
I would just say I think you'd be crazy to trust it. Like, I think it's like a lot of other things. Everybody wants to show how easy components of it can be, and yeah, some components of it can be easy. And it, like in the IT world, we call that next. Like when you're going through screens, it just says, install this next. But to actually configure it and make it work for your company, it's going to take so much more knowledge and expertise and understanding and experience. So I definitely would not go down that path, because I think that ends up in a scenario where down the road you're calling Trofeo or you're calling congruentX and saying, oh my God, this is so broken, help me fix it. So do it right from the get-go is what I would say.
Yeah, and to Greg's point, it's good to play around in OpenAI and some of these environments, but inside of a company, even if you don't break safety rules, there's a cliff where you can do things to a certain point, but with a bigger company, Microsoft, Google, etc., you usually don't hit that cliff. You can have one of your business users get something started, but if it's in your company's infrastructure, a developer can jump in and help them take it to the finish line. So that's a really good case to use more of a corporate model and a COE with AI.
Well, we are at time, and I feel like we should have like part 2, because we didn't get to some really important items. However, does anybody have any additional questions? Next steps? I do want to remind you guys, they are offering a free 2-hour Envisioning Lab, and you get both Greg and Chuck. So 2 companies, help and guidance. Fill out the form. It's in the chat. Thank you all for the great questions, great conversation. Thank you, Greg and Chuck, for your insights. Please, if you have any additional questions after, reach out. We'd love to have you guys set up that session.
For sure. And it sounds like, Greg, we need to do a joint blog on the COE topic and AI COE. It sounds like a lot of people would be interested in that.
Yeah.
You guys are awesome. Thank you so much.
Awesome. Thank you, guys.
Thank you all.